But right here, buddy, that's a tattoo.
Wow, that's David Dunham.
Fact or fiction?
Eric Dungey had no chance away. Flips it to Watkins again.
This is the Nachos Analysis College Football Show, presented by Pump Monkey Septic Services.
Welcome to Season 2, Episode 6 of the Nachos Analysis College Football Show. Today is Thursday, September 28th, and the Tigers dropped a 2-2 after an overtime loss to fourth-ranked Florida State this past Saturday in Death Valley. I'm your host, Drew Archer, and I'm joined by my co-host, Matthew Johnson. Before I even ask how you're doing, I'm going to start the show off with a fact or fiction right off the bat.
Okay, let's
get ready for it. So it's a pre-fact or fiction, fact or fiction. Say that 3 times fast. All right, fact or fiction, Cade made the correct read by throwing on 3rd and 1 in overtime.
Yes, fact, he did. But that doesn't make the fact that we called that play any less stupid. I think I heard some of the coaches talking about how, or maybe it was even Dabo mentioned that in hindsight, like, you want to take out that option even away from him. You just expected him to hand it off, but the read was not there. So, yes, he did make the right read, but in the situation of the game we were in, no.
Yeah. Saturday, Clemson was 0-4 on 3rd and 4 or less, including that play there. They ran it twice and they passed it twice. And could not convert 3rd down from that short yardage Saturday. So we'll get into all of the Clemson stuff, but how are you doing, Matthew?
I'm okay. I left the game Saturday feeling okay. It was probably our best performance, Clemson's best performance against a Power 5 team since the ACC championship last year against North Carolina. So it's just really frustrating that we outplayed Florida State throughout the entirety of the game, and then it's still never felt like we had a good chance to win in my eyes.
Yeah, I had the weirdest feeling leaving because, like, similar to you, like, I was pleased with what I saw on the field, but some of those coaching errors, and I'm sure we'll get into it, you were keeping a running tally there throughout the game of how many coaching mistakes that occurred. But I mean, the best game the team had played, and you were just so close to getting your groove back, beating a top 5 opponent, and now we're sitting here 0-2 in conference play for the first time since 2010, which was Clemson's only losing season under Dabo Swinney. But other than the Clemson game, it was a pretty wild weekend. My Cowboys, disappointing a game against the Cardinals. How about the Broncos? But teams from Colorado, if you're a Colorado Buffaloes fan and a Denver Broncos fan, you had a rough weekend.
Yeah, I texted my girlfriend that on Sunday as the Dolphins were blowing out the Broncos, and I was like, wow, it's a bad week to be from Colorado or a Colorado sports fan. Just, you have the Buffaloes go in and just get absolutely pounded, and then you maybe think the Broncos can do something instead against Miami, but no, that kind of looked like the game I have on in the background back here. Might have been in the same stadium.
Might have been. I think it was in that same stadium. For reference, Matthew, I can't see you today, but not your entire screen is showing behind you, is it? Can they tell that that's the West Virginia game?
The only thing you can see in my screen is like the bottom left corner of my TV. So I think you can see the scoreboard where it says West Virginia. You can't see that it says Clemson. But this, for everybody listening and not on video, on my TV, I've been playing in the background like good Clemson games, some of my favorite Clemson games. Like last week before the Florida State game, I played the 2011 Florida State game. But I'm feeling pretty down on this program right now, so I'm going with a joke. I got 2011 Orange Bowl versus West Virginia going on right here.
And before we get into the topics, I feel like we have to discuss it because it's been discussed literally everywhere ad nauseum. But somehow Taylor Swift is taking everything that we love and is probably going to find a way to ruin it. I feel like men everywhere try to escape the Taylor Swift hoopla and just watch football and be mindless. And that's all I saw when I watched the Kansas City Chiefs games the other day. I was texting with your sister the other day. Quite the power couple we got going on in the NFL now.
Yeah, I saw. My friend was telling me yesterday about this TikTok trend where girls will be talking to their husband about how she's just so happy that Taylor was able to make Travis Kelce famous and like put him on the map because he's such a handsome and nice guy, and just to see how their boyfriends react. It's like, no, Travis Kelce was famous before Taylor Swift. I related it to I said Taylor Swift is Kanyeing Travis Kelce, where Taylor Swift was already famous, but Kanye brought her to a more mainstream audience, and that's what Taylor Swift is doing with Travis Kelce right now.
I remember seeing video trends of the same exact thing when Dua Lipa came out with that remake of Elton John song, and they're like, look at Dua Lipa. She's doing something for this unknown artist named Elton, just bringing awareness to his music. That's so nice of her.
I even saw that same thing for Hollywood's Bleeding, the Post Malone album, on the song that he has Ozzy Osbourne on. I saw people saying it's so nice that Post Malone's giving small unknown artists like Ozzy Osbourne a chance.
So, yeah, a big weekend, and to recap the weekend, it's actually Monday. I don't know if you saw it. I posted it on the Nachos Analysis Twitter account. SO Club comes from the clouds just bashing society, and they're not wanting to work. Did you see that?
I saw that you posted it. I saw we got a lot of people responding to it, too. There is some good political discussion going on in the Nachos and Analysis mentions yesterday, or Monday.
Yeah, there was way more political discussion going on in our mentions than I care to have, but hey. But let's talk about why we're here. Today's show, we're not going to have a guest today because, quite frankly, I was busy and didn't get a guest for today, but hopefully we'll have one next week. Because I mentioned to Matthew off air, I want to try to get Larry Williams back on, friend of the show. Some news kind of dropped today with seems like Clemson's going to announce something by the end of the season. Some people were throwing out even a specific date of October 12th of leaving the ACC, so we'll see. And he had a lot on Tiger Illustrated today about that, so we'll try to get him for next week. But this week we're going to break down the Florida State game, talk about the notable Week 3 games, talk about our Twitter poll. The Twitter poll this week, if you don't follow us on Twitter, Instagram, all of our big platforms, do so you can vote. But this week's Twitter poll was, after starting 2-2 following Clemson's best performance of the season in Saturday's overtime loss to Florida State, how many wins will the Tigers finish the regular season with this year? So we'll discuss that. And as always, fact or fiction. And then Matthew and I will review last week's Pick'em contest and give you picks for this week before we wrap up with our Syracuse preview. So another full episode today, just minus the guest. So quick recap: Tigers fall to Florida State 31-24. Clemson drops to 8-9 all-time in overtime games. The Tigers outgained Florida State 429 to 311 yards and had 25 to 16 advantage when it came to first downs. Clemson surrendered only 22 rushing yards, the fewest produced by Florida State in any game since Clemson held the Seminoles to negative 21 yards in a 59-10 Clemson win in 2018. Clemson dropped 144-10 when outgaining opponents during Dabo's tenure. Cade looked good on Saturday. He completed 25 of 38 passes for 283 yards with one touchdown, no interceptions. He did have that fumble. I don't put that on him. We'll probably talk about that. But he also scored a 1-yard rushing touchdown among his 13 rushing attempts. Will Shipley had 18 carries for 67 yards. Phil Maffa recorded a 46-yard rush just before he gave up that missed that block that led to that fumble and scoop and score. Kicker Jonathan White's, it was setting up to be the perfect Cinderella story. He did record his first career start after spending some time on the team from 2019 to 22. He came out of retirement this past week. It was a big story. Nate Wiggins left the game on the final play of regulation with an injury. Prior to that, he had one of his best games of the season, probably even his career. He had 5 targets, didn't allow a catch on Saturday. And then a tweet I wanted to throw out here, get your thoughts on Matthew. Clemson has, this was from Dustin Black on Twitter or X, whatever you want to refer to it as. Clemson has an offensive success rate of 52.4% and a defensive success rate of 34.2, which is historically aligned with the teams that have gone on to win 14 games in the playoff era. What are your thoughts on that, and what are your thoughts on Saturday as a whole?
Well, that's actually a pretty good segue to the first thing that I wanted to talk about this game, because for the past 5 to 8 years, Clemson has won these close one-possession games by just outmatching and out-talenting the opponent. So now that we don't have talent just head and shoulders above every other team in the ACC, you don't win the same rate. And I think that's pretty similar to what Dustin Black is getting to here. Is, I mean, on paper, this is a good team. We're just not putting the pieces together. And I will say, I don't think Dabo was ever a great game manager. So now that we're like close in talent level to everybody that we're playing, we're just losing. Let me reword that. The cracks show a lot more now that we just don't have the talent to cover up Dabo's poor coaching choices sometimes. That's kind of my main takeaway for the game, but Drew did mention in the intro that I was keeping tally of some coaching mistakes that I thought were very instrumental in how the game ended up going. I counted 6 during the game, but on my rewatch, I got it down to 5. So the five coaching decisions that I think most really affected the game. There's 2 on special teams in the first half. I can't remember exactly. I know there was one where we were lined up to go for it on 4th down and had to call a timeout, and then we still ended up going for it on 4th down, I believe, and maybe got it. I can't remember, but we ended up wasting a timeout there. Clock management at the end of the first half was pretty awful. Well,
I'll jump in and say clock management at the end of the second half was also not good as well, because, I mean, you wasted a timeout towards the end there that you could have held on to, and then you don't even have your guys ready to spike the ball with 6 seconds to go in that quarter. Now, It's a long shot, but Brian that sits up there with us, he said on the radio broadcast they were talking about lining up for a field goal because, oh, good gosh, what's his name? Our kicker who lost his starting job this past Gunn. I mean, he kicks it out of the end zone on kickoffs. At least it's a Hail Mary there at the end of the half to at least do that, or throw a Hail Mary or something. But you left 6 seconds on the clock there, and they look befuddled. They come running off, and then Dabo's like, go back to go spike it, and they can't even get lined up to spike the ball. So, same thing at the end of the regulation.
Yeah, I was just about to get to that. We burned 2 timeouts about midway through the 4th quarter. I believe they were both on the same drive too. And this isn't a one-possession game, maybe even a tied game at this point. And with 6.5 minutes left in the 4th quarter, and Dabo's out here burning 2 timeouts in a one-possession game. Those are timeouts that you're going to need when you're moving the ball, or hopefully moving the ball. I was just going to bring that up too. The clock management on the missed field goal drive at the end of the game, just awful. Like you said, the team didn't look like they knew what they were supposed to do. They thought that they were just going to run that play to Will Shipley, get tackled, the clock's going to run, we'll go to overtime. But we had plenty of time, and that was a good run by Shipley. If you get up on the ball and spike it, you have another play to take a shot at the end zone and give yourself a chance to win the game. It it just seemed unprepared that they didn't even want or even try pretty much to make it a game. They were just happy with taking it into overtime. But I mean, that's kind of what I had to say about the coaching. I have some other stuff about some other game aspects. I don't know what you had to say about this, Drew.
No, I mean, we tweeted it out from the stadium, I think. And I want to clarify this. I think some of those coaching decisions ultimately ended up costing the game in the long run. However, you do have to give this staff credit for the way they schemed and game planned for this game, too, because this was the best game that we've seen all season. And I really like the game plan we had there. And we were able to move the ball. We held Florida State to 3 points in regulation in the second half. So the staff did a lot, really, really well. There was a couple of just in-game situations that just kind of left you befuddled and scratching your head. And ultimately, that was one of the weirdest moods that I've ever felt leaving Clemson, because, I mean, realistically, we haven't left Death Valley with a loss very often in the last 10 years.
This is the third time since 2016.
Yeah, it's an infrequent feeling, but the way that the game went and the way that the game ended, it was weird. And then because it was an overtime game, literally everyone stayed in their seat the whole game. The game ends just quickly, and then I'm left standing there in the aisle trying to get down from my seat for 20 minutes without even moving, and it was just somber. It was a weird feeling walking out of Death Valley Saturday.
Yeah, it was weird is one word to say. Sad is another word. But like you said, I left the game feeling good about our football team because we looked good. There were some fans that I had talked to leading up to this game that thought that we were going to get 2013'd in this game, like of what Florida State did to us in 2013. And I'm like, did you not watch the Florida State Boston College game? Like, this is not that same team. That 2013 Florida State team is one of the best college football teams of all time. And this is not. This might be the second best team in the ACC right now. So, a couple other things about the game that I wanted to bring up. I was talking to Drew about this during the game, but we ran a bunch of the 2-back sets in the first half, and we started the game with a lot of quad looks with 4 receivers to one side. Most of those times it was a running back split out as the 4th receiver that would motion into the backfield, but it was just giving Cade some time to read what the defense was in. So I really liked that, but I only counted 3 separate times in the second half that we did that. It just seemed like we got the lead, got into the second half, and got straight into game management mode, trying to just whittle the clock down. But even we couldn't do that well because we had the chance. We took like 4 or 5 minutes off the clock in the fourth quarter, and got down and stalled. That's just awful play calling. But if you take away that fumble 6 that we were talking about that Maffa missed the block on, we win in regulation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's pretty crazy to think about. And then you kind of mentioned a similar stat about Nate Wiggins, but Clemson's DBs as a whole held Keon Coleman and Johnny Harris to a 40% completion rate when targeted, which is pretty incredible. I'm sure if other Clemson fans are like me, we were pretty worried about Johnny Harris coming into this because we don't really have somebody to match up with a 6'5" receiver that's fast. So it was really nice. Nate Wiggins played an amazing game. Hopefully he's able to get on the field soon. And Sheridan Jones had a good game. A couple safeties, Jalen Phillips especially, was all over the field and playing one-on-one with Johnny Wilson. So the last thing I wanted to say was that Cade played his best game, and he was very decisive. We kind of knew that going into the game that Florida State's defensive line was going to be their strength, and that's where they outmatch us on the field. And the pressure was getting to Cade really quickly, but he was being very decisive and throwing the ball on time and getting it out of his hand. The only play, like you mentioned earlier, that he didn't do that on was the fumble 6, but I'm not putting that one on him. So I think Cade played his best game yet as a Clemson Tiger, but just not enough to tackle all the other variables that we have.
Yeah, I was very pleased with the way the offensive line held up. There's 2 sacks in the game. Neither of them were really on the offensive line. The one obviously was on Phil Maffa, and I'm forgetting. I know there was another one, but I can't remember when or how it happened.
I mean, this is straight memory, so I could be completely wrong, but I want to say there was a play where we kept a tight end into block, Sage Ennis maybe, and just whoever was on that edge went straight by him. If I'm thinking correctly, I think that's about right.
Yeah. So I'm really, really pleased with the offense. I mean, they were getting pressure, but they were giving Cade just enough time to make his decision, get the ball out of there. Like you mentioned, the DBs held up. And then what was the deal with did you see the post-game press conference with Florida State's quarterback talking about feeling disrespected and how we were only covering their top 2 receivers, man? And like, dude, you won.
How is that disrespectful? I mean,
it made 0 sense.
It's like we're in our best defensive game plan that we have, and it worked. Like, we shut your 2 best receivers down. How is it disrespectful? It would be disrespectful if we were playing press man all game and we were getting torched over the top. That's disrespectful. Yeah. But the fact that we could stay with them, like, why would we respect you and give you a couple yards of space? That's stupid. Yeah. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
And a good portion of the time, he wasn't even putting good balls out there for them to even catch.
No, I kind of thought we were still in a position, even after the game, after we lost in overtime, to start a overrated chant, because Jordan Travis looked pedestrian all game. So did Johnny Harris. So did Keon Coleman. I would say he had the best game out of those 3, their top 3 offensive weapons. But there was a few times where Travis would throw the ball up to Johnny Harris, and I don't know, Johnny Harris just wasn't physical enough to come down with it. It's like he has this huge frame, but he's not, sunning people like you think he would.
Yeah. That was a big surprise to me, and Florida State is definitely not they lost a spot in the polls after this week's game. I don't think they're a top 5 team, especially the way they played these last 2 weeks against Boston College and Clemson. They're a talented team, and their 2 best receivers, they did not have their best statistical game. However, they did step up and make plays when they need to. And I was listening to William Qualkenbush's show this week, and they brought up a good point. They are in the position where Clemson was so many years. When you're in these games, the cream rises to the top. The team that has the best guys, they're gonna find a way and win it. They have the better receivers, and when they needed those receivers to make a drive to tie the game up, to get a touchdown in overtime, they had the guys to do it, and that's what Clemson's done so well during that 5-year span where they had that run, and they just had the better guys who stepped up when the team needed it most.
We talked about the play where we called the RPO on 4th down and Cade ended up throwing it even though it should have been a designed run. We haven't talked about the play right before at 3rd and 1 where we call a smoke screen and get blown up and lose a yard on 3rd and 1 where you think that's the situation where you just lined up. It's 4-down territory anyway. Why would we throw it behind the line of scrimmage? That's one of the worst play calling decisions in Clemson history.
Phil Maffa back there and run the ball 2 straight times and get that 1 yard.
Yeah, I mean, that we could even do I wouldn't even be mad with a little wing T formation where you got Maffa and Shipley in there and a fullback and just run a counter. I mean, Florida State's defensive line was holding up our run a good bit throughout the whole game, so I wouldn't say that 1 yard is a guaranteed pounded up the middle and we get it for this game. But when you got 2 chances from 3rd and 1 to get it and you don't run it once on either of those downs is pretty frustrating.
Yeah. Yep. Well, anything else before we turn the page?
That was all I had. I don't really want to talk about this game much more.
We'll move on to week 3 notable games. I will say I was in a weird kind of depressed mood for the next 2 days after this loss. So I really didn't watch much more football. Saturday, I did go over to Alan Powell's house, owner of Pump Monkey Septic Service, and watched a little bit of the Colorado-Oregon beatdown. Coincidentally enough, Clemson, Florida State drew in the third biggest crowd as far as viewership this weekend, and then the Ohio State Notre Dame came in second, and then Colorado-Oregon was the most viewed game this past weekend. Either of those games, I mean, did you get a chance to? Well, first of all, I turned on the Ohio State Notre Dame game, watched like the first quarter. It was 0-0, and I was like, Emily was home. She was like, "Do you want to watch something else?" And I was like, "Yeah, this game's boring." So I cut it off. But those green uniforms look horrible.
Yeah, they were not cute. That game was really crazy though. How it ended, I remember. It's slipping my mind right now, but really good game.
Notre Dame down there shorthanded with 10 guys on the field there.
Yeah. They had Notre Dame was kind of in a position like Clemson was, where they had every opportunity to win the game in the fourth and then just kind of let it go. So that's a good win for Ohio State. Kind of makes me feel a little better about the Notre Dame game, and it's kind of putting the ACC out of playoff contention. I guess Florida State probably isn't going to lose again the rest of the season.
Their schedule sets up as long as they don't have some more games like they did the last 2 weeks. I mean, they got a very manageable schedule.
Yeah. The other game I wanted to talk about that happened, it was a Friday night game actually, so I'm not sure if you picked this one up, but Virginia versus or NC State at Virginia. Did you watch that one at all?
Virginia, I would have never thought a Tony Elliott coach team would be so undisciplined,
stupid,
especially there at the end.
For those of you listening that didn't get to see it, I'll break down like the final sequence of this game. So Virginia's losing by 8 points, and they score a touchdown to go down. That leaves them with 2 points to tie. But on the touchdown play, a Virginia offensive lineman headbutted an NC State player and got a personal foul penalty that backed the game-tying 2-point conversion attempt to the 18-yard line, which, you kind of start thinking, wow, that's the end of the game right there. Virginia converts, okay? But on the conversion, Virginia's quarterback takes his helmet off on the field and like flexes to the crowd. And he gets a personal foul too, which moves the kickoff up, or back, moves the kickoff back. Can't get it to the end zone. NC State gets a really good return to like the 50-yard line, run 1 or 2 plays, and they're in field goal range to win the game. It was, we have some pretty frustrating things happen in this Clemson football team, but nothing quite like that.
That was rough. Virginia had every opportunity and just kept making boneheaded play after boneheaded play to ruin it.
They were literally right there, ready to win the game pretty much, or at least take it into overtime, and did everything from that point on to lose.
Yeah, that was a weird one. I hadn't sat down and watched Virginia or NC State at all this year. So, first of all, I was confused. I didn't know Armstrong had transferred to NC State. Also, I knew Kobe Pace obviously transferred out of Clemson. Had no idea it was to Virginia. So that was an interesting thing to learn while I was watching that. But, yeah, first time I'd seen these two teams, it was very sloppy football.
Yeah, they're just not something you really want to – I don't know. I cannot get over how Virginia ended that game. It's just funny, honestly. It's almost close to that – sorry, it's close to that, like – Florida play last year where the guy like threw the shoe away and that ended up costing them a game for their personal foul. Is almost exactly like that.
Yeah. And then we had the big matchup. We referenced this in our Fact or Fiction last week. Colorado, Oregon. I threw the Fact or Fiction out that Fact or Fiction, Colorado hype train, Deion Sanders hits a brick wall this week against Oregon. It looked like it hit a brick wall this weekend against Oregon.
Yeah, we both said fiction, I'm pretty sure. And
yeah,
it definitely hit a brick wall.
I initially said fact and then talked my way out. I was like, oh, it's going to be a speed bump and they're going to slow it down. But yeah, they hit a brick wall. It was rough.
Yeah, I mean, Oregon just dominated the line of scrimmage, and I think we all kind of knew that Colorado's weakness is on the line of scrimmage. I just personally didn't think it was going to be this glaring when they play like a good competition. And this game is kind of like what I thought some Clemson fans thought the Florida State game was going to go like. Basically, where we're just getting torn up on the line of scrimmage and can't get any offense going, and then our defense is just tired after the first or second possession because we're going 3 and out every time. But is really this game just comes down to domination of the line of scrimmage, and Oregon just completely blocking up the middle.
Yeah, and I hope I didn't mess up your transition there, but did you see what the Oregon video Monday recapping the week?
I saw people I didn't watch the video, but I saw people talking about it where they were showing like clips of some Colorado players talking trash before the game, and I saw a few pictures of some like Oregon players like doing the Shedeur Sanders, like holding the watch up.
It was quite the troll. I can't remember the caption. The caption of the tweet. I think when because in Colorado's little saying, is it us against them or oh gosh, they have a saying. I can't remember. They did a play on words with the caption of the video when they posted it on Twitter. It was all around good troll move and taking what Dion puts out in the media all week and harnessing it and doing a little bit of their own there at Oregon. So that was quite funny. Colorado's got another big test this week. Granted, it is at home, but a top 10 ranked USC will come to Colorado, and I don't know, could have another blowout again this week.
Yeah, I don't see how this one's going to go any different than last week did, honestly.
Yeah. All right, before we get to our Twitter poll, we have to shout out our sponsor, Pump Monkey Septic Service. As I mentioned earlier, went and hung out with Alan Powell while I was in town for the Florida State game. Pump Monkey Septic Service, owned and operated by Clemson alumni. They service the upstate. They do a lot of the jobs that a lot of these other companies here in the upstate are just flat out too busy to do. That's how Alan got into the septic business. He needed his septic tank pumped and was told it'd be 2, 3, 4 weeks before someone could get out there. Septic issues are not something you want to have to sit on for a month. So he started his own service. So if you need your septic tank service or need a quote, need someone to come out and check it out, give them a call at 864-710-2211. They're on Facebook. They're on Instagram. And again, the phone number 864-710-2211. When the dump's funky, call Pump Monkey.
Twitter polls.
All right, Twitter poll of the week. After starting 2-2 following Clemson's best performance of the season in Saturday's overtime loss to Florida State, how many wins will the Tigers finish regular season with? The options were 10, 9, 8, and 7. Before I even reveal the answers, I'll give you a chance to give your thoughts, Matthew. Also, your sister got in on Twitter, Elizabeth Johnson. I would have picked less than 7 if it was an option. So Elizabeth not high on this team as far as how it's going to finish up the regular season. What are your thoughts, Matthew?
Yeah, I'm honestly on the same page as Elizabeth here. Looking at our schedule, I couldn't tell you one game that I think we will for sure win. Every other game is going to be very similar to how this Florida State game went, where we're in the game and then we're just going to have some mistakes that cost us the entire game, and we don't have the talent to just beat these teams anymore. So if I could choose a different answer, I would say 5. Maybe we'll win 3 more games, just because it also falls back to I think our Clemson is like 3-8 or something in their last 11 against Power 5 teams. Maybe not that bad, but something really bad. So that's giving us the 3-win spot for this year. We'll get 3 more wins in our next few games against Power 5 teams.
Well, to your point, you said you don't know that there's a team that you can definitively say will beat. I'm going to say we'll definitively beat Wake Forest. We'll definitively beat Georgia Tech. We'll definitively beat NC State. I'm going to go ahead and throw it out there now. We're going to definitively beat Syracuse. We'll talk more about that later. But I am in that 8 or 9 game range. I'm hoping for 9 because that puts us in the opportunity to win one more at the bowl game to keep that 10-win streak alive. That's one that I'm holding on to. I don't want that to end this year. So
yeah, I like my emotions made me want to choose 9 to keep that 10 wins, but I think you mentioned earlier that the first time Clemson started 0-2 in the conference was Dabo Swinney's first full year as head coach and the only year with a losing season, and I believe the year after that is when the 10-win streak started. So I think I'm just expecting a 2010-like season, honestly.
You mentioned that stat. I put that out there on Twitter this week. I don't know if you saw this as well. Do you know the last time Clemson started the ACC 0-3?
0-3. So I'm assuming that in 2010 we did not start 0-3.
No.
So it would have to be before then.
You were very young.
Yeah, I guess it'd have to be maybe 2002.
1998.
Oh wow, I was actually very young. I thought very young is like a spectrum. Like I could have been 3 or like 3 months.
They started the season by losing to Virginia, Wake Forest, and North Carolina. They did win the 4th ACC game against Maryland. So that's at stake. They've started 0-2 for the first time since 2010 in Atlantic Coast Conference play. And depending on what happens this weekend up in Syracuse, which has been a tough place for the Tigers to play, and a tough opponent all around, no matter the venue, 3 is possibility. So could be on a historic low if the Tigers don't win this week. Yeah, I threw out I think we're around the 8 or 9 win mark. I'm really, really hoping for 9. I'm basing that off of how we performed against Florida State. Now, could it be we got up for that game? It was the biggest game of the season. That's a very realistic possibility. You could have a huge letdown game in Syracuse this weekend, but I'm saying 8 or 9. The vote, the way it went, thank you to all who got in and vote. We have some very optimistic fans. We'll start with the low number, 12% of people voted they think Clemson will finish the regular season with 7 wins. 23% of people think the Tigers will finish with 8 wins. 35% 9, and 30% 10. I guess a lot of people were optimistic with their performance this week against Florida State. I was kind of surprised that there was that many people getting on those 9 and 10 win seasons.
Yeah, I agree with you. When I was looking at this question, trying to come up with my answer, there is a part of me that can see Clemson winning out the rest of the regular season. Like we showed on Saturday that we are a talented team. I just think we make too many mistakes as a whole program, and that's including like mistakes on the field and coaching mistakes. That's why I just don't see us necessarily guaranteed winning any games.
Only time will tell. Fact or fiction?
Fact or fiction?
All right, fact or fiction. Clemson player development is non-existent, and players get worse coming to play here. This was one Matthew threw out there.
Yeah, I actually did write this. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on it, actually, before I give my thoughts.
I've heard quite a few people, not necessarily within the Clemson world and the Clemson media bring this up. You've had people try to make the argument that Trevor Lawrence regressed at Clemson. I don't necessarily agree with that. I'm gonna say fiction. I don't know that Clemson's staff is the best at player development, i.e., the experience level of all the coaches that are position coaches at Clemson. But I don't think that it's non-existent. I don't think we have players regressing.
See, I'm gonna go with fact because I have a few players that I would use as an example. I think you can argue that Trevor Lawrence got worse in his time here. I think he became a better overall football player. He made a lot better decisions by his junior year at Clemson, whereas in 2018 he was kind of just slinging the ball, but he was talented enough to get away with it. I think he had his career low interceptions in his freshman year at Clemson, so there's that. Also, DJ Uiagalelei, I think he regressed at Clemson. If you think about when he was like more of a raw talent, his freshman year starting against Notre Dame, he played great, and we didn't see that DJ ever again. Miles Murphy, I think, got worse as he was at Clemson too. He came in, had a great freshman season, kind of dealt with injuries. That might be a factor in Miles Murphy here, but I don't think he was as explosive or dominant in his junior year as he was as a freshman. I would also bring up Xavier Thomas. I think Xavier Thomas was a lot better as a freshman than he currently is, but that's another one where that he kind of went through injuries, and that might have had to do with his regression. But from what I've seen so far out of XT this year, I think he might be back to where he was. And then my last one that I had written down was Joseph Ngata. I don't know why I said Nada, but I think Joseph Ngata was probably more talented. He was just a raw athletic potential at that point as a freshman, but we never got to see anything out of it. He just never developed, and I think those are the few that first came to my mind when I was thinking about this question. That I think it's a good argument to make that some players get worse when they come here. It's not a good recruiting pitch either.
I think the Joseph Ngata situation, I think that was an evaluation miss, personally. I mean, he was a talented guy. Didn't really amount to much at Clemson. I think the defensive lineman you brought up, Murphy and XT, I think injuries were a bigger factor in what we've seen out of him. Xavier Thomas had a great game on Saturday. He was also getting held
every
play. Which, I mean, you could make that argument. I saw a bunch of Clemson fans complaining about that on Twitter. There was plenty of times where Clemson got away with some holdings. There was a Florida State photographer that was at the game that shared 4 pictures of their players just getting absolutely mauled by Clemson offensive linemen. So holding is just not something that gets called very much anymore. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like that would be a good one to put up on Twitter to get everyone else's thoughts on that one.
Yeah, maybe this can be a Twitter poll next week.
Yeah. All right, fact or fiction, Tyler Brown is Clemson's best receiver.
Before I answer, I do want to say this Tyler Brown, I think, will be a very interesting evaluation for the first fact or fiction question. If we see Tyler Brown regress, or if by his junior to senior year he's not doing what he's doing right now as a true freshman, you got to look at development, and especially at receiver. I don't think ever since we hired Tyler Grisham we've developed a single receiver. I'm just going off on a tangent now too about Tyler Grisham. Before I'm just not even going to answer this question. I don't know that Tyler Grisham coaches the players like effort levels as much as they should. I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but rewatching games, there's very often times where the ball is coming out of Cade's hand and only one receiver is looking for the ball. Every other receiver out on a route looks like they're running a route as a distraction. And if any team watches film on us and they see their receiver kind of being lazy, they're just going to ignore him because they know he's not getting the ball. It seems like we sometimes call plays to go to one receiver and one receiver only. Everybody else is just out kind of doing their thing. So that's a completely besides the point tangent I just went on. But I'm saying fiction for this question. I think it's still Antonio Williams when he's healthy. I guess currently, since he's not healthy, Tyler Brown might be our best receiver, but I think he's competing with Bo Collins in that regard. But Bo is also one of those main people who gets lazy on plays where their number isn't called.
I'm gonna also say fiction here. I will say he might be our most dynamic receiver. He has a little bit more. He has some different qualities that a lot of these other receivers on the team do not have, and he's exciting to watch. But I'm going to go fiction on this one. He has the potential to be Clemson's best receiver going forward the next couple of years. So be on the lookout for that.
I'll read this next one because I want to ask you. I also wrote this fact or fiction, but at one point in the season, Drew is on record saying that Colorado Buffaloes will finish the season with 5 wins. If Colorado were to make a bowl game, will Clemson be like a formidable opponent for Colorado, like similar win-loss records, similar rankings, stuff like that?
I think right now they're on a similar trajectory. I think it could be possible they finish up around the same win total and could be matched up in a bowl game. That would be a fun bowl matchup. But I'm gonna say fiction. I think I throw out that 5-game win total for Colorado in the preseason. Where are they at now? 3 or 3-1. The Pac-12 is pretty well stacked this year. I think they might get over that 5, maybe 6, maybe 7, which would be a season that would exceed expectations for Colorado. Because I don't remember if that 5 number is just a number I threw out, if that was the win total that Vegas put out in the preseason, but I hope Clemson is not playing Colorado because I think that Clemson can and should finish with a better record than Colorado and should not get matched up with them.
Yeah, I just think it kind of be interesting because how much on this podcast we've talked about Colorado this year, and I guess it's just kind of like all the media has kind of been enamored with what's happened in the first part of the season with Colorado. I just think it'd be kind of poetic. And we are on a similar trajectory right now to end up. But if we do face them, I think we do what Oregon did to them. We're too strong on the line of scrimmage. Our defensive line will eat their offensive line up, and Shedeur would not have any time at all. I don't think that would be a close game, really.
Can you just imagine the build up to the bowl game, the press and the media availability that Coach Sanders and Dabo would have? I just think that would just be if I'm someone there as a credentialed media person having to cover that game.
It's a sports writer's dream.
Yeah, 2 of the easiest people to cover. They're going to give you quotes. They're going to give you headlines. That would be an interesting week leading up to that bowl game.
Yeah, I mean, that's another point that I had even thought about. Is just the coaching matchup of 2 guys who are controversial in the media, I guess is a good way to put it.
I actually think Dion and Dabo could be good buds. I think that'd be a funny friendship.
We should try and make it happen.
Dabo, I'm not sure if you've met. This is Coach Prime.
This is my friend Dion.
Could be a match made in heaven. All right, our weekly picks.
Weekly picks.
All right, let's review our week 4 matchups. Not much to review. Matthew and I tied this past week. We both finished 1-3 with our picks. my favorite of UCLA and Utah hit. Utah was a 4.5-point favorite at home against UCLA, and Matthew took the under in Ole Miss, Alabama at 55.5. I also had that game, but I picked Ole Miss as the underdog to win that game. I just felt so confident that Ole Miss was going to go into Tuscaloosa and win and definitely cover that spread. So the way it shakes out, Matthew still has a 1-point lead after 4 weeks in the contest. He leads 9-8. Still no update on our punishment. I am still working behind the scenes to make that happen. But any thoughts on these picks from last week, Matthew?
I know I had mentioned the Wake Forest needing to win this game to get to 8 wins this year. And you had even mentioned both of these teams in a separate conversation earlier as almost guaranteed wins or should wins for Clemson on the remaining schedule. Both teams have looked good at points in this season, and I might disagree that they're chalk it up wins for Clemson. I just feel like we are going to put ourselves in situations to play down. This is not what we were supposed to be talking about, but I'm just going off. But yeah, after this Georgia Tech loss for Wake, their 8 wins is looking more and more unlikely. So I kind of hope they beat Clemson.
Was that one of your picks for the preseason?
Yeah, for our preseason we had like an over Vegas projected win total, and you picked South Carolina at 6.5, I believe, and I picked 7.5, and I picked Wake Forest at 7.5. So
we shall see. So you're rooting for that over a Clemson victory over Wake Forest?
Yeah, or no, I'm looking for Wake Forest over Clemson.
So yeah, and we talked about it already. The Colorado-Oregon game, that was your underdog. That was a big point spread. It's a big point spread again this week for Colorado with USC. So interested to see how this week shakes up. All around bad week for the two of us in this pick'em contest.
Yeah, we went 2-6 as a record for this week. That's pretty horrible.
Yeah, not good. So let's move on to week 5. We're gonna wipe the slate clean, so to speak, and at least hopefully I get some wins this week. Can't say that for Matthew though.
Yeah, I'm on back-to-back weeks of going 1-3. So I took a little page out of Drew's book from when he went 3-1, I believe, a few weeks ago, and really evened the score. So I'm not going to say any more about that. We'll just go. I am taking my favorite as LSU -3 at Ole Miss. I know Ole Miss is pretty highly ranked, but I think LSU has actually looked pretty good this year so far. Their only loss coming to Florida State, and Ole Miss is going to have that Bama hangover game. I think LSU is going to win that one.
I am hanging out in the ACC with this pick. I'm going with Notre Dame -5.5 at Duke. I believe that's where College Game Day is going to be at this week, ironically.
Interesting. I did not realize that that's where Game Day was going, but
yeah.
Moving to underdog, I am picking Utah. They are a +3 underdog at Oregon State. And Oregon State hasn't looked amazing this year. Utah's offense hasn't looked amazing this year, but the Utah defense has. And I expect them to give DJ Uiagalelei some problems in that game. So taking Utah +3.
Well, we were thinking similar on that game. I'm going with Utah +3 as well. I know it's on the road for the Utes, but I think that defense is going to pressure DJ, and I think they not only cover, I think they win at Oregon State.
Yeah, I made the mistake of picking DJ to win once this year, so I'm doing the opposite this week and picking against him. Going on to over, U of SC at Tennessee ±63.5. It's a lot of points, but both of those offenses can really get after it. It was a shootout last year when South Carolina ended up coming away with that win. But yeah, I'm expecting not a lot of defense to be played in that game.
The over has hit in that game the last 4 meetings between those two teams.
That makes me think that you're picking that game too, if you know
and
that
for
stat.
that reason, I also am picking South Carolina, Tennessee over. Ooh, I must have found a different line than you. 62.5. You can go ahead and give yourself 62.5 if you want there.
Okay.
Make it a little bit of an easier win. But yeah, that was the first one that caught my eye for that over. There's a lot of points put up. I will say, South Carolina, I can't remember the exact number. The Spurs Up Show put it out on Twitter today. There was a number like 20 or 24, something like that, that South Carolina struggled to get over that, or has not the last few times they've been at Tennessee. But I think the Gamecocks put up more than that, and that over hits. A lot of points, not a lot of defense.
Yeah, I'm expecting a lot of points out of that game. So I guess not really a huge margin can be made up in this week. But for under, this is what I meant when I said I was sticking with Drew's strategy when he kind of made up all that ground earlier in the season. He picked 3 SEC games that week that all hit. So that's why I'm here in the SEC again. Going the under hit for me last week, Alabama at Mississippi State. They're plus or minus 46.5, which is low. But neither of these offenses are amazing or, blowout potential. I think that's going to be a pretty low-scoring SEC ground and pound type of game.
We've talked about it a lot. I'm going with the Pac-12 and USC Colorado under 73.5.
Jeez, that's a lot.
Yes, I think Colorado is going to struggle to put up some points, and I think 73.5 is a lot of points. So that's what I'm going with. You and I don't have a lot of wiggle room. We got the same under and over, or underdog and over pick. So it really comes down to our under picks and our favorites this week.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if there's any movement in the standings.
All right, Clemson, Syracuse preview. The Tigers go on the road to Syracuse, New York. Clemson is 9-2 all time against the Orange. At Syracuse, Clemson is 4-1. The last time these two teams met was on October 22nd of last year. Tigers won a close one there. The Tigers won a close one at home at Death Valley, 27-21. Clemson currently has a 5-game win streak. The line in this game is Clemson -7, over-under set at 53. Just quick thoughts, Matthew, on that line. Do you like the 7-point favorite there? You think that's a good line for this matchup?
I mean, it's a good line for Vegas to make some money, but it's not a good line if you're putting your money on it. That kind of reminds me, you mentioned earlier about the not Broncos, but the Cardinals-Cowboys game. My friend Trevor, who pays very close attention to sports betting, he was talking to me Monday night, and he was like, or Sunday in the afternoon, and was like, I'm really keeping an eye on this Cowboys-Cardinals game because the line kept moving, and that should have been a game that the Cardinals should have been outmatched in pretty badly. And he was like, based off of how this line keeps moving, I'm not going to be surprised at all if the Cardinals keep this close and make it a game, or even just outright win it. So Trevor does have a very specific theory of the NFL/Vegas rigging games. So that's some evidence for you there. Maybe make you feel better as a Cowboys fan.
It's all part of the script. My proof that it's not rigged and there's not a script. Why would you leave a team like the Dallas Cowboys, one of the most profitable sports programs in the world in all sports? Why would you have such a drought for Super Bowl success for the Cowboys? So,
well, it'll make it even better when they finally win one in 20 years.
I'm waiting. It's been a long time since the 90s. Clemson is seeking its first conference win of the season. We talked about this stat earlier. They're 0-2, and to do so, they have to knock off an undefeated Syracuse team. The last time the Tigers started 0-2 was in 2010. It was Clemson's only losing season under Dabo Swinney. That year, the Tigers lost to South Florida in Charlotte in the Meineke Car Care Bowl. It was actually my first bowl game ever. It was not a pleasant one. And then I think I also mentioned this up top. If the Tigers were to lose, they would fall to 0-3 in the conference, which would be the first time they've done that since 1998. Clemson's entering the game against Syracuse unranked for the first time in series history. Clemson has been ranked in the top 25 of at least one major poll in each of the 11 previous all-time contests. Tigers are attempting to move to 15-4 against undefeated teams, 4-0 or better during Dabo Swinney's coaching tenure. The Tigers entering the game having scored at least one rushing touchdown and a national best 71 of its last 73 games since the start of the 2018 season. I think that's a big one. You saw in some of these close matchups with Syracuse, especially the Chase Bryce here, where you come from behind, you rely on Travis Etienne and getting the run game going. I think you're going to need to really rely on this run game this week. On this day, the game will be played on September 30th. Clemson defeated number 12 Virginia Tech on the road, 31-17. With that victory, Clemson became the first school in history of the AP poll to beat 3 top 15 opponents in the month of September. And then lastly, Clemson is 7-8 all-time in games played on September 30th, but has won its last 4 dating back to 1995. So if we win, we get 500 on the date of September 30th.
Interesting. I feel like usually our on this day type of stats are usually a lot better than 7-8 on a specific day. So this one isn't shaping up very well. I wanted to see if we could name the 4 teams that Clemson has lost to under Dabo Swinney that were undefeated. Does this count season opener games where like we played Georgia and they're technically undefeated, but they haven't played a game yet?
I don't think so. I don't think that would be the case. I know one is LSU.
Yeah.
In the national championship.
Yeah. Pitt wasn't undefeated when we lost to them. Alabama wasn't undefeated when we lost to them in 2017 in the playoffs.
Was that year that a couple years ago when we lost to Georgia in the opener, we turned around and lost, was it the 3rd or 4th week of the season at NC State? I believe they might have been undefeated then.
You're right. I think you're right there.
I had tickets to that game. I saw the writing on the wall. I sold it. Made some money and did not go to Raleigh. Other than that, I don't know.
Yeah, I can't think of the other ones.
What did it say it dated back to?
Dabo's whole tenure, so since 2010.
It can't count. I don't think it counts season openers. You got that Alabama game. You got 2 Georgia games. I don't know what the other one is. But what are your thoughts on this game, Matthew?
Well, I've kind of already said that I thought we played our best football last week, but I'm not entirely sure that that's going to carry over. I seem to think that we're going to play down or play to the level of our competition every week, because no matter how much more talented we are than them, we're going to find ourselves in a game with them. And Syracuse is not close to Charleston Southern or Florida Atlantic. So I think just the fact that they are a Power 5 team, I don't think we have a good chance. Somehow Vegas, like we talked about, that 7-point spread for Clemson right now, I don't understand where that came from. I wonder if it's just to bait some money in on Syracuse, because if you look at ESPN, I believe it's like their FPI projection chance to win the game, pretty much, that updates as the game goes on. Syracuse is at 55% right now, or at least yesterday morning when I was making my notes, they were 55%. So that one's a little interesting. I feel most confident in this game, in predictions wise, that Clemson's going to find themselves in a close game in the final minutes and just get outcoached the rest of the time. So that's kind of where I'm at for this game. I think we're talented enough to beat every team on the rest of our schedule, but we don't have all the pieces together, and that includes coaching.
I'm going to lean a little differently. This team has improved week in and week out. It's gotten better. You saw basically each week you've seen your best performance, and I'm kind of leaning with that trend going forward. I think you'll see a better performance this weekend than you did last weekend. Well, maybe not better, but on par with, at least. Tigers got to get a win. So far, you don't have a victory over a Power 5 opponent, and I don't know. I'm the opposite of you. I'm kind of surprised. I think that this 7-point spread is a little bit low, as evident by my score prediction we'll talk about here in a little bit. But, yeah, Syracuse does play Clemson very well, but I really liked what I saw out of this team this last week, and I think that these players, these coaches, they're hungry. They've played really, really well in some of these losses, or both of these losses. You had a lot of fluky plays in Duke, but if you look at the numbers, the way the team was able to move the ball, if you take out some of those errors of missed field goals, turnovers, that kind of stuff, Clemson wins those games. And not to sound too much like Dabo, we're 3 plays away from being a top 5 team. But despite the struggles the team has had, it's been able to put up the numbers. It's been able to move the ball consistently. The defensive line is held up. The secondary is held up. Now, you got a great quarterback at Syracuse, and he's going to challenge you. Did you see that? It popped up. I know it was a week or so ago. The game against Purdue, he faked a handoff, and absolutely no one knew he had the ball, and he just slowly rolled out and just jogged down the field with nobody in sight to tackle him.
No, I did not see that, but that's a little scary.
It might have been the best fake I've ever seen in my life. And they were trying to run the clock. They were winning. The game was already in hand, so he just jogged 20 yards, and then as a defender got close, he just slid. But he's a solid quarterback. He's done really well against Clemson the last 2 meetings. I believe he started his career at Mississippi State and transferred, but I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little optimistic, but I think that Clemson's going to win. I think they're going to cover the spread this week.
Yeah, what's going to be really interesting for the remainder of the season, especially after the Florida State game where playoff contention is out. And this is a team that in media days and stuff leading up to the season was talking a lot about playoffs and championships. That's out of the window now. That's not a possibility. Where does our motivation come from here on out? Do we have a motivation to get that 10 win, keep that streak alive? I don't know if the players care that much about that stat. I think it really just has to be a week-to-week thing from here on out, and like you said, trying to get better every single week. I'm just not sure that it's going to carry over as much as we would like, so...
The nice thing is we don't have to sit around and wait on Saturday. I love when Clemson has away games and they are noon. So you can roll out of bed, watch College game day, and that first slate of games is your slot. So don't have to sit around and wait and wonder.
And then you have the rest of the day to watch football.
Yes. And that's one thing that I love going to Clemson games. I don't get a chance to watch much football whenever I go to Clemson home games. So I'm excited to have a day where I am on the couch. This is the first Clemson game this season that I hadn't been to. So I'm excited to have a day to just sit and watch football all day long.
Yeah, that actually, this past weekend I planned much better, and I was home so fast after the game. So, I was home before my parents had made it back to start setting up the tailgate, or taking down the tailgate, I mean. I was able to get home really quickly and watch football the rest of the day. So I'm just going to float this idea out since it's on the end of the podcast, and Drew, you can give your thoughts on it too. I've thought the last 2 weeks about, since I'm really close, and even if it is a home game, I can come home and 15 minutes after the game record a instant post game reaction, just a YouTube video or something. I'm just we're just brainstorming on the podcast right now, but I didn't know what you thought about that, Drew. I've kind of thought about, like, there's always some, like, fresh thoughts in your mind right after the game. It'd kind of be funny just to let all those emotions out in one video and just have, like, a Clemson fan reacts to the Clemson Florida State game video.
A few beers deep as well.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I'm down. I don't have anything planned on Saturday. Emily is at work. Let's do a post-game YouTube video Saturday.
Okay. I actually won't be able to this weekend. I'm planning on going.
Throw the idea out there.
I'm planning on going to Winston-Salem this weekend to visit my friends. So, but I just thought about that when I got home Saturday from the game, and it was like the game had literally just ended. Like, traffic is still backed up so bad, and I'm sitting at home. So I was like, this would be a really good opportunity to just talk shit about Clemson football on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm down. If it works out after post games, let's do something like that.
Okay.
Get those raw emotions and instant thoughts.
Yeah. Okay. I like that.
All right. Do you got a score prediction for Saturday?
Yeah, I'm going with Syracuse 24-21.
Back-to-back weeks picking the opponent.
I might pick the opponent the rest of the season if things don't change. I don't think, like I think I said it in the Twitter poll. There's not a game on the schedule right now that Clemson has proven to me that they can win. We're gonna do something stupid that's just gonna completely wipe out the talent advantage and the experience advantage that this team has. It's just all going out the window when we play a new team every week. So I'm going Syracuse by 3. All
right. I do have to point out I was pretty doggone close with my prediction last week.
We both were.
The 31-27 final score and being 31-24.
Let me pull up my notes from last week. I think I said like 30. I said 37-31 FSU. So we were both really close.
Yeah. I'm going differently than you on this one, and if you're going to continue to pick against Clemson, that will probably differ a lot this season. But I got Clemson winning 31-17.
Okay, I'd be happy.
Cover the spread.
I'd be happy if that happens. I'm just not confident enough to pick it. Like, I mean, if you could probably go back to some of our episodes from last season where both of us picked Clemson every single game. But this is a different team, different year. We're playing different competition. The ACC is up from what they have been. And Clemson is down very much. So, yeah, I just can't feel any confidence in picking Clemson.
We started the show with a factor fiction. I'm going to throw another factor fiction out for you. The SEC is down this year. If the Tigers were in the SEC this year, they'd have a better record than they currently do as an ACC team.
Oh, no, not at all. We would be the same, 2-2.
2-2?
Yeah. I don't know, like, what the schedule would have worked out to be, but even if we played, like, a team even with Duke in the SEC, let's say, like, probably better than Mississippi State, maybe Ole Miss level. We're losing to Ole Miss in week 1, beating 2 FCS opponents, and then losing to the best team in the conference, which would have been Georgia, if we're relating it to SEC.
South Carolina can hang around. I think we can hang around.
I mean, that's what I'm not saying that we're getting blown out the rest of the season. We're going to be in every game. We're just not going to have a chance to win at the end. Because, I mean, if you look back at this Florida State game, we were winning the majority of the game and well into the second half. It just kind of fell apart at the end and gave them every opportunity to win. So that's my expectation for the rest of the year.
All right. Well, I hope you're wrong. But we will return next Thursday to review the Syracuse game, preview who we got, Wake Forest, the next week. So homecoming. So thank you all to the listeners for joining us. Thank you to everyone who follows us on social. If you don't, subscribe on YouTube. We're putting more and more video content out than we ever have. Also on TikTok, all that stuff. So I appreciate you, the listener, and we'll see you next week. Peace.
Peace. I'll throw this in at the end of the episode, but shout out to all of my NBA fans out there. How about that Damian Lillard trade that happened today? Bucks might be due for another championship.